and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today, I am absolutely delighted to bring to you Peter Lawrey from Chronicle Software. Peter, how are you?
Very good. Thank you for asking me.
No problem at all. Listen, it's lovely to have you on the show. And for a long time, I've heard lots about you, so it's great to meet in person. The sort of celebrity of the Java world, from what I understand, and we've got some very excited people in our team about hearing this episode. So really pleased that you managed to make the time, and lovely to have you on it. But for those who have been hiding under a rock and not heard too much about you, can you give us a little bit of background to yourself and Chronicle, please?
Sure. So Chronicle Software recently had our 8th anniversary. It was originally thank you. It was originally a consulting company, but over time we've developed more libraries and products, and now libraries and subscriptions account for about 60% of our revenue, which is very helpful. We still have a significant portion doing consultancy, and a lot of our clients like that mix, that a lot of it's already been developed, but we have the ability to help them customize it and add to the custom feel they're looking for. And very much that is our focus, is taking projects where in the past they might have been developed from scratch, or they may have taken an off-the-shelf solution and they want some sort of hybrid where they're not developing the whole thing themselves, but they still have the custom feel. They can still do the value add that they are looking for commercially.
I think it's interesting. There's a couple of businesses I've spoken to recently who've started that journey off in consultancy and sort of morphed into wider and bigger and better things alongside that as well, responding to customer demands. And I guess it's that customer-driven conversation that makes consultancies work so well in that, and being able to respond and plug some of the holes that they were seeing in the industry. Is that the same way it's worked for you?
Yeah, I think we've done well from being more customer focused and on demand of what the customers actually need, and that's because, like I said, our clients tend to be looking for something that has the custom feel. They're looking to something to do a bit different. They're not looking entirely off the shelf, but they do want something that already works and has been used in production elsewhere. So it's that combination, some blend is what they're looking for. And like I said, our ability to extend the product in the ways they need, or help them extend it in the way they need, they see some real value in.
No, absolutely. And that value is very clear to be seen, because despite 2020 being sort of the year that it was, for Chronicle, it was one where it was your best year last year. And I love, I think it's always something there where everyone has to be a bit sensitive to the difficulties of last year. But there are many companies I've seen who've defied the odds and provided real value. And to hear good news like that, I think, is essential, where you've seen a sort of shift in market focus and with increased trading volumes, as you mentioned beforehand, companies like yours being able to grow and provide real value. Tell us a little bit about how 2020's so I guess sort of enabled the growth of the business as well.
Sure. So 3 years ago, we shifted more towards, we used to have an office, but we shifted towards having everyone being able to work from home. And that was pre-COVID. That placed us quite well as an organization, so that when COVID was happening, a lot of organizations were unsure as to how they should do things, who should they outsource to, and having an organization that's already set up for that, I think, gave some of our clients a lot of confidence that we were able to cope with this scenario and maybe even help them work through it, because we've been doing it for years already. And that added a lot of value. Another big aspect was that we did see a decline in sales in Europe and the US, which has historically been very strong for us. But at the same time, we were able to shift to Asia quite readily, and that enabled us to make increased revenues this year.
And was that with pre-existing clients, or was that new business? Because I'm interested at the moment. There's a lot of cross-selling, upselling internally in brands that I've seen for people, but that new business has been a little bit more challenging for people. How did you manage that?
Historically, we've been very much a new business organization, and we're trying to actually increase our recurring revenue. We still add about 40% recurring revenue, and about 60% is new business. So That hasn't been such a problem, other than we would like to increase our recurring revenue. There was another question you had, I've forgotten.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about how whether it had been, because I'm looking at the growth of businesses at the moment, and I think if particularly with the traditional model being trade shows and networking, etc., I think sales has suffered a little bit. So what we've seen is businesses do very well with upselling in accounts that they're currently working in, and sort of pivoting products, etc., and doing various other areas. But actually, people have been struggling a little bit more implementing new business solutions with other companies. Now, with regards to a move to Asian markets, there's obviously a lot of companies in the UK and US and Europe who've got Asian entities where there's been a little bit of movement over to there, and yet I would imagine with you it's pioneering into new businesses in the Asian market and generating there as well, or has it been a blend of both?
It's been a bit of a blend. I mean, there are a couple of elements you mentioned are very relevant in that upsell is very important to us. A lot of our users use our open source, and we get up to 20,000 downloads a month for our open source products. So obviously, turning that into a commercial relationship and then saying, well, what are all the other things that we can provide is a very important part of our business. So we get warm leads, but the warm leads, it is very important to us to turn it into, well, these are the other things we can do for you as well. That's a good portion of our revenue is switching a warm lead into well, how about you get us to do all these too? Another aspect has been that because we've set up for remote working, normally we would be going out to shows and meeting customers in person, but a lot of customers have had to shift. They've not been able to do that. So for example, we had a large deal in Singapore. Normally they would expect to meet their vendors in person, which is easier if you have people on the ground in Singapore already. We do now, but at the time we didn't. But because they weren't in a position to do that anymore, they were saying, well, how about we can meet online instead? Right. So it in fact, it opened up a market to us. So the people that a lot of areas where they would generally insist on meeting local people and having a decent, significant physical presence as part of the sales cycle. Because the thing is, if a sale takes 3 months, having someone available physically for 3 months is not always easy if you're not already based there. That was kind of that was shifted to well, we can do that via Zoom. Then that essentially opened up those markets to us.
I think that's sort of, sorry to cut in. I think that's a big feature of companies that have done well, isn't it? Looking at the negatives and finding the positives from it, and those opportunities to actually sell in a different way.
Yes,
have been tremendously, much more efficient in terms of how businesses can interact, and that I hope is a long-lasting legacy of it. Sorry, I cut across you there, Peter.
Yeah, and I imagine for a lot of organisations, they're finding that their sales lead times have increased. But in our case, our biggest revenue source is tier 1 banks, and they always have a very long lead time anyway. We've not really seen much of a change there, to be honest, for us, because they have such long lead times. We had a major deal in Hong Kong, rolling out our fixed server to the whole bank eventually. That saved them. They said that was saving them $5 million a year. That out. But even with all those financial benefits, it took well over 2 years to make that sale.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? When you look at that, it's absolutely remarkable. And one of the big pain points, I think, of investment banking is the procurement process, for obvious reasons. When you look at the regulation and risk that's involved in all of it. But it has been a sort of stranglehold on the industry. And my impression is that it has been a little bit easier for a number of reasons to sort of speed up slightly that process, and deal cycles are actually moving that little bit quicker. And it's been easier for smaller companies to interact with larger institutions because of it, potentially because of this sort of growing interoperability we're seeing of less legacy systems and enterprise systems, and a lot more plug and play models that are sort of been coming into that. I know you've been looking a lot more at integration as well, to suit and benefit your clients and what you're seeing in the market. Tell us a little bit about how that's changed as well.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we were very much focused on adding new functionality to our products and adding more and more products to our product set and adding new features and pieces. And here's some new cool thing that we can do. That was a couple of years ago. But we got to the point where we realized we actually had more products and developers, and that what our clients really wanted was more of a shift towards more stable and quality builds. And that's what we've been focused on the last couple of years. Now we're broadening our shift towards integration, ease of integration, ease of use in the cloud. So last couple of years, does it work in the cloud and does it work efficiently was more the question. Now it's more how easy is it to use in the cloud? To what degree can we offer cloud-like features to clients who are not ready to shift to the cloud, because we're still talking about low latency trading systems. They're not really suited to the cloud yet. They often talk to components that are, however, downstream, but the core system isn't quite ready for that. But does that mean that they don't get any of the benefits, right? They don't get any of the features? So that's another area we're looking at. How can we bring cloud-like features to non-cloud deployed systems? Bare metal managed hosted systems that are often co-located with the exchange, which is another thing. There aren't any clouds that co-locate with specific exchanges, for example. And so that will probably always be dedicated machines, that component at least. So we're looking very much more at integrating and going through that exercise ourselves and providing working examples of those integrations. Not because that it can do that, and that's what they have been doing, but we're looking to provide a lot more of that upfront so they don't need to do that themselves.
I think that's that whole area is fascinating, isn't it? Because the adoption of cloud has obviously never been, digital transformation of the last 12 months has been, rapid. And I think cloud has finally sort of landed a lot more mainstream across the financial services industry. There's been that skepticism for many of the reasons that you just mentioned. Plus, I think above anything else, the conservatism that we see, around making mistakes in financial markets that quite often hinders innovation. With that innovation, and as you say, with integration with other products, and really sort of, I think the drive has been over the course of last year is how can we make something that's fit for purpose and bespoke and unique, but isn't necessarily having to be completely different for every single organization you look at, but how you can take some of these product suites and seeing companies who are working really well together to provide, joined up solutions rather than saying, right, we're going to try and be everything to all markets. And there are companies that, vendors have seen that have done that. We're going to try and have a whole suite of products and be everything to everyone. But there's some there that have really partnered and worked well with, the whole interrupt movement probably being spoken about more in the last 12 months than I've ever heard it, spoken about. Tell us how that's manifesting itself a little bit more, and what the benefits are to the end user on that.
Yeah, so we've seen that there's particular products our clients are using again and again. One of them is KDB. In partnership with another company, AquaQ, we've developed an adapter to provide that integration already. And there's a number of third-party open source products that are widely used, such as Vertex, Spring. We're looking to provide integrations to those as well, and so that they can get up and running with them quicker.
Fantastic. Okay, and I think what Chronicle and you in particular have been famous for, if we want to call it that, particularly in the sort of Stack Overflow world and everything else that's read around it, is you are one of the great sort of speakers on performance and the whole performance side of training, particularly around Java technologies. And I think you term it C-like Java and how everything's moving in that particular space. Give us a little bit about, and I think this whole performance piece has been coming for years and years. There was the race to zero latency that sort of dominated the early 210s, etc., etc. And the first half of that decade was all about the speed to zero latency. Then we sort of moved around that. But I think that performance piece has never been more critical than right now. You've reimagined that a little bit. Tell us what's happening and your thoughts there.
Yeah, so on Stack Overflow, I still have the most answers for Java and the JVM in the world. So I still keep an interest there. But in terms of latency, there was a buzz around hedge funds doing latency arbitrage and the race to zero, and then people quickly found that was an ever shrinking market. You either were the fastest or you weren't. And if you were the fastest, you made a lot of money. If you weren't the fastest, then you were basically out in the cold. So that wasn't a sustainable business model for so many organizations, particularly banks decided a long time ago to get out of that. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't always room for continual improvement. And a lot of that is about increasing client expectations. Clients just expect that things will be completed efficiently and in a shorter time, and the time they expect it to is ever increasing because they ever decreasing because they compare different providers, right? So they can easily see if I can get the same information or the same liquidity from two providers, this one gives me the fills, this one doesn't. Then they're going to just shift their business is literally will shift automatically, without even any thought from the trader. He's just going to go wherever he gets the liquidity he's looking for. So it's not even just a commercial arrangement. That switch can happen on a per trade basis, let alone if you're not fast enough. So. In some degree, that's not a race to zero. It's a race to being better than the rest of the banking world. And banks tend to be more favorable to that concept. They don't like to be first. They also don't like to be last. And so they're not necessarily going to just go as fast as possible, but they want to make sure they're getting a decent share of the market. One way to do that is to continually improve their latencies. Another thing that's happened, certainly in the last year, is we've seen significant trading increases in volume due to increased liquidity, volatility, different big events, more social-driven events, such as things like GameStop, just driving the market in difficult to predict ways. But that creates an opportunity. There's greater trading volumes. So if you're getting a fee per transaction, it's great for you. So there's an opportunity then to invest in being able to handle those peaks. So not necessarily handle my average order rate, but what is the biggest order rate of the day becomes more of the question. Can I capitalize on that and make advantage of it? So so you're designing a system for the peaks more, and so you want to have greater headroom, more capacity, and continuous improvement in technology. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking also, even though we've got a very performant solution and it's been performant enough for all of our existing clients, we're looking to go next level in terms of performance. And that is similar to our libraries in general, which is introducing into Java concepts that have come from C++. And that is the concept of what's called trivially copyable objects, which is an object which can essentially be just mem copied. Without needing to go through each field and decide what to do with it, or even do any real code that's on a per attribute basis. It's just, here's a object, just copy it, just straight bulk copy. And we've got a POC that we're developing for an exchange at the moment, and around that, just illustrating how it can be used in a mix-mashed form. So obviously you can't use trivially copyable for everything. So what do you do when you want to take advantage of it? But in reality, there are going to be some pieces of data that's not really suitable for.
So with the purists sort of always espousing this sort of C++ as being the root, for high performance trading, etc. And you looking at give us some of the motivations behind writing in Java for performance software. What's sort of really fueled that for you?
The biggest fuel that we see is just the lack of availability of top C++ developers that also understand the business really well. Right. So you want someone who's strong, very strong technically, that also is very business focused.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very rare breed of individual.
Very much so.
So what a lot of organizations find they end up doing is they'll get maybe a C++ developer who's really strong, if they can find such a person, and they're not necessarily cheap. And they get someone on the business, and hopefully they'll work together to produce what they need. However, what is much more practical, certainly for banks, in terms of their ability to hire and retain these people, is someone who has a very good understanding of Java, maybe not the same low-level, fine-tuned understanding that C++ developer has, but also a good understanding of the business, well enough to be able to speak and understand the requirements of people who are in the business side. That is much more achievable, much more reasonable to find people who are very capable at striking that balance, if that makes sense. So they don't need to be as low level on the technical side, but they still have enough business focus to be very productive as an individual or as part of a team. And so constructing teams in banks which have that blend of balance of technology, they're not going to be focusing too much on the low-level technology that they're not worrying about the business demand, and getting productive teams, the shorter time to market. They find that Java is often a more effective delivery technology in that regard, because the thing is, if given any amount of time with the type of resources that you might wish to have, C++ will always be fastest.
Yeah.
Right.
So
given the team that you can get with the time scales and constraints that you have and the shifting requirements, because there's another problem with banks is constantly shifting requirements. But by the time you've deployed it, the requirements changed a few times already. And short time to market, because you've got an opportunity risk as well, which is not, is somewhat unusual to banks. They have more opportunity risk than other sort of IT projects. Then Java is as a higher level language, is a much happier medium. You get a similar sort of argument for other technologies such as Python and C#. So Python more in the data science view, Python's even more productive. So it itself is not very fast, but it's more productive because most of the heavy lifting is done in something lower level anyway. And it's more productive for data science to produce in it. C# has a similar advantage, particularly on desktops, Windows desktops.
I think so it's fascinating for me, this obviously being in my day job within the recruitment industry, of access to talent, and access to talent driving innovation, and saying, look, you can call it a compromise, or you can call it a solution, is that people will, as you exactly right say, that sort of access to C++ talent, with that business understanding, is kind of the unicorn that everyone's looking for, which has an impact on price, and that efficiency gain you're talking about there can be a monumental loss in terms of where we're going, particularly with the risk that has on that talent walking out the door, leaving you compromised from it. So being able to do that and saying, right, okay, are you compromising it slightly? And I presume it is slightly in terms of the performance levels of it all, to then be able to staff up with the right people alongside that. It creates a real opportunity within the marketplace, and an advantage then, as you say, for companies who might not necessarily be the fastest, but certainly can tuck themselves well in the peloton there to be at the higher end of the race within that. Well,
this is where the time constraints can also make a big difference. You can spend so much time trying to get a C++ program to work and stay up and be reliable that you don't spend enough time on performance. And I've seen this happen again and again. Whereas with Java, you're much more likely to have something stable and working with enough time to then focus on tuning it.
Yeah.
So if you spend a well-tuned Java application will always outperform a poorly tuned C++ application.
Exactly, and their reverses your efficiencies again.
Exactly.
So it's fascinating to look at, and I think this is probably you as a consultant being able to do, and this is what we were talking about right at the very start of our discussion. The consultancy angle there feeds and the ability to understand the practical issues from a customer allows you then to come in to provide solutions that are based very much on fact as opposed to opinion of what people are really looking. Is that, have you seen that as an advantage to you in the business?
Yeah, definitely coming with a much more practical and applied way of thinking does appeal to a lot of clients. And certainly when it comes to interacting with other developers, we do very well. It's often, for us, it's about how do we help developers convince their managers, who are actually the ones that have a budget, right? The business managers, that it's worth spending money on us. That's usually the question. It's not how do we convince developers to use our products, or how do we get developers on board. Usually in any kind of sale, the developers are usually favoring us. It's a matter of how do we convince the business that there's a value in engaging us, or that we're the right people to be working with commercially. Because they may have a bigger or more established relationship with a bigger organization, for example. Or
this is sort of very similar to the sort of Mark Benioff model, isn't it? With how he had a sort of army of evangelists who would go out there and basically do the selling for them, because when you have that sort of tribe there who are seeing the efficiencies of being able to gain it, they become your de facto salespeople effectively, and certainly open the door to the conversations for you, which is where you were talking about the leads coming through from it.
Yeah, and our most popular product, which is open source, is Chronicle Q, and that gets up to 20,000 downloads a month.
Incredible.
And so that creates a big knowledge base, and also a big number of people that are potentially looking for us to, when is it the right opportunity to engage us.
I imagine that intuitive feedback and stuff allows you to keep, continuously improve as well. And I love that whole Kaizen model of taking that sort of collective feedback. And that's the beauty of the open source world, I guess, isn't it? To be able to iteratively improve all the way through with feedback throughout. Peter, this is it's a discussion which is fascinating, and I'm really pleased we managed to get you on to have it. Tell us, but I'm aware of also the clock ticking through, and it goes so quickly when you're having a conversation as fascinating as this one. So I'm conscious of your time and the viewers as well within this. So I'm going to say two things to finish off with. Number one is, can you give us a little bit of insight as to what to look out for from Chronicle over the course of next of 2021? And number two, is, can you tell us, people who are listening to this and keen to find out a little bit more and speak a bit more about what Chronicle are doing and how they can get in touch with you, how best to do that as well?
Yeah, so we've got, I guess, the two focuses: integration with third-party products. So have a look at what we're integrating with. We may actually give you some ideas, even if you've already integrated with these, or you're looking to integrate with them. And the other one is check out trivially copyable objects. You may not have a use case for them just yet, but they are pretty cool and stunningly fast. Particularly, and look at how we test this. How do we show that this is a very robust, even when the machine isn't behaving in an ideal manner, because that's something that's very poorly understood and very poorly benchmarked. In terms of reaching out to us, there's a Chronicle.software is our website. We have a form on there that if you're interested. That also has links to all of our open source as well. So you can skip through from there to the open source to actually see the code, see what some C-like code actually looks like. What are we talking about when we talk about C-like code? Yeah, and we have an example Chronicle Q demo. We've got demo packs for all of our commercial products, but also have a demo pack for Chronicle Q, which is open source, so you can check that out as well. It's got, like, for example, order management system, a very noddy one, which shows how data flowing through our microservices it actually works.
Fantastic. Well, look, I know there's going to be a whole host of our community who are going to be fascinated in that. So let's see if we can break that 20,000 mark when we put this out for you as well. Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing that wisdom for us. Certainly sounds like incredibly exciting times for you and the team over there at Chronicle. Congratulations on not only sailing through last year and navigating it, but putting your best ever year in. I think that the only companies that have done that have really understood the marketplace and been able to provide solutions to genuine problems. And that certainly has been the sort of theme of the last half hour for it. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming on the show.
All right. Thank you very much, Toby.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon in another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks a lot. Cheers.